Alright gang, here we are once again about to break into a fresh box of comics. As always, I have absolutely no idea what is in here. We're going to discover that together, and let's see. My voice cracked. I'm going through puberty. Oh no! More like menopause, but throw it, start the theme. Hey there, Bubby. Welcome to Shanghai. My name is Duke, and this is another unboxing video. And as always, I am opening up a box of comics to grade for sale on eBay under the username .com-comics. If you go to the Sell My Comic Books channel, you can see my boss actually unpacking collections as they come into our warehouse in Freeport, Maine from all over the country, all over the world. He sorts those into different categories, different sales channels, and the ones that are set aside to be sold as what we call raw singles on eBay, those end up here on my desk, and I do the grading for those. Anyway, if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, do all of those things. If you don't, that's okay too. Leave your nasty comments, leave a thumbs down, whatever you feel like you have to do. That's quite okay. So anyway, as you probably know, if you are a comic book fan, Captain America was appearing in Tales of Suspense alongside Iron Man. It was a twofer book, and then at issue 100, the title became Captain America. Iron Man got his own series with a new #1. Tales of Suspense, the renumbering, continued as Captain America. My presumption is that the book that continued the numbering was probably deemed by Stan Lee at the time to be the least popular of the two characters in that book, because back then you rarely got a new #1. Publishers would go out of their way to avoid a new #1 because the theory was that distributors, retailers, they wouldn't put out a new #1. They wouldn't even try and sell it because it was an untested product. Better to go with a book that was on issue 101 or whatever, because that intimated that it was a tested product, it had an audience, it had been around for a while. So my presumption again is that the characters that continued the numbering of the old book, that those were deemed the least popular of the two characters from that book. So anyway, Captain America started with issue 100. And here, obviously, if there was a 100 with this particular collection, it went to CGC, and all of our books that go to CGC end up not on eBay, but auctioned on a site called comiclink.com, so you can look for those. So we've got 101, 102, and a lot of these, I don't actually know a lot about the Captain America of this era. Like, I don't even have like an essentials collection. So I can't really tell you a ton. Got two at number 105 here. So a lot of this is just me going through it and showing you the covers, maybe occasionally opening up the artwork to show you what was going on inside, and just giving you a chance to take a look at this series if that's something you've never done. 106, got two of those. 107. 108, the Trapster, or Paste Pot Pete. Oh, it had two of those. This one now, this is a very popular cover. You see this a lot purchased more for the cover than the book itself, because it's just a cool thing to have up and framed on a wall. This is a particularly nice copy because often, because of the white cover, you will see these browned up. Marvels from this period are notorious, particularly on the back cover, for really kind of browning up, not really aging very well. And so you often see this cover kind of tan or brown. This is actually a pretty nice white-ish cover. So, yay. And so here we've got 110. This, I believe, is the issue where Rick Jones took over as Bucky, became the new partner to Cap. Of course, Rick Jones was a professional sidekick. He was a sidekick to the Hulk, to Captain America, and later Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel. This is a popular cover book as well. This book does really well on eBay, as do these Steranko covers. Now, this is another one, and we've got two of them, of number 111. These Jim Steranko covers really sell well, and this is another one that, because it's a primarily white cover, you often find it tanned or browning. So a one that is pretty white, this one's got a little bit of a stain on it, but one that's pretty white is pretty desirable. Number 112, 113, we've got a couple of those. This one I have seen somewhere. This particular cover won some kind of an award as like the best cover of the year or something like that. I can't remember and tell you exactly what the award was. There's 114, and as long as I've got it, I'll grab another 114 off the stack next to me here. So there you go. Let's grab some more. Another big stack. 115. Some Red Skull Cosmic Cube action. 116 coaster, and that one's not in very good condition, frankly. 116 starring the Avengers, another one that you often find tan or brown because of the white cover. Now you'll notice we're missing 117, and that's because 117 is the first appearance of the Falcon. So I presume that if it was in this collection, that Sean, my boss, packed that up, sent it to CGC. But here's 118, that's the second appearance of the Falcon. And what else we got here? 119. 120, and it was around this period, Crack Up on Campus. I think it's probably because Stan Lee was doing these college tours at the time, but it seems like every title in the Marvel Universe right around this time had an issue where some big thing happened on a college campus. And it generally was some kind of a riot. So there's the Crack Up on Campus for Captain America. 121, we got two of those. Man Brute, you don't see much of the Man Brute today. Scorpion is issue 122. 123. And, what the hell is that? That looks like Frank Robbins, but it's Gene Colan. It was on the artwork at this time. 124. 125. 126. 127, 2 of 128, 2 of 129, some more Red Skull action, Batroc Ziliper, and 130, 130, Bucky Reborn, so there's some more Bucky action. I don't know, I don't think it's Rick Jones at this point anymore. 131. I don't remember. If you do, leave a comment below. A couple of 132. And I think we've actually got 3 here of number 133. The Origin of MODOK. And 134. That's kind of a rough pose. You couldn't hold that pose for very long. Another 134 upside down. And I'm going to note, because we see it later, see he's holding onto this rope. I don't know. I don't think the Falcon could fly at first. His big thing now is he flies, but I don't think he actually flew at first. Except here he does, and see, he's got a rocket pack to do it. So I think it took them a little bit to decide the Falcon was actually going to fly. And again, I haven't read any of these issues. I came along much later, and I don't know much about these issues, so you go ahead and tell me. 137 with some Spider-Man. What is that? Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention. How far back was it? Did I miss it? Yeah. So 134 is notable also because that's the first issue to co-star the Falcon with, the official title down here in the indicia remained Captain America. Oh, this one's got somebody's name, Gary Ito. I presume is the kid who bought this book originally. The title officially remained Captain America, but on the cover at least it was Captain America and the Falcon. And when I started buying comic books, it was still Captain America and the Falcon. It stayed that way for a long time. And Marvel did this, and again, just as I presume that, Captain America continued the old numbering of Tales of Suspense because he was deemed the least popular between himself and Iron Man. I presume that he also got a co-star because the book wasn't selling particularly well, because Daredevil also got the same treatment along this time. His book became Daredevil and the Black Widow. So where were we? We had 3 of those jetpack Falcons. Spider-Man, and that might have been a little bit of a sales boost there. Some more Spider-Man. Falcon's all caught up in the webbing. Got 1 more of those, so we had 3 of those as well. And let's see, 139, 140, and again, I don't think the Falcon's actually flying at this point. 141, some gray gargoyle action. And, oh, did I miss it? Oh, yeah, I did. It was quite a while ago. We went to 15 cents. Now, this is a book that's got a couple of things going on with it that make it noteworthy. And I could probably break this out into a separate video, and maybe I will, at least when it comes to talking about the cover price. So part of what makes this issue noteworthy is that we've got the Falcon here in his classic red and white costume. This is how I know the Falcon. This is what he was dressed in when I first started buying Captain America, around 1976 or so. And he was also my first Mego action figure. I've got a lot of nostalgia, a lot of goodwill for the Falcon because he was my first Mego, and that's the costume that he was wearing. Notice he still doesn't have the wings underneath there, so I still don't think he's flying yet at this point. So going back again, he was initially in these green and orange togs, but adopted here the red and white. But this is only just for the logo. It isn't until the next issue that he actually has that costume. He has that costume on the cover, as opposed to see here he's still in the green and orange, and inside here he's still green and orange. So you got a little preview there of his new costume. And I imagine the kids at the time might have been like, what the hell? This is the Falcon, and that's his costume, and that's what he's got on inside, and why the hell has he got a different costume here? So basically, they jumped the gun a little bit. And I think the reason partly for that was because the format changed. You see how it was 15 cents, came up to 25 cents with a larger package and a new logo, and then went right back down to 20 cents. Although they did change the pose of the Falcon here. So even if they changed the logo just to go along with the size change, they actually only kept that figure for that one issue. But the reason this is kind of noteworthy is that this price was also just for this issue. And this is kind of well, it's an interesting story to me. You may not give a fudge. And I expect probably you won't, but stick with me. I think this is an interesting story. So comic books were 15 cents. And the problem at the time was that comic books were losing rack space on the newsstands. There are no comic book stores yet at all. So it's just the regular newsstand still. And they're losing rack space because this is the late 60s and corporate America is starting to buy up all of the mom and pop corner stores. And the corporations are interested in maximizing their profit. So if you've got, a magazine that might have been at that time 75 cents and a comic book that was 15 cents and they both took up the same amount of rack space, screw the comic book, you're going to stock the magazine. Insomuch as you kept a magazine stand at all, because it was a lot of space for not a lot of profit. So comic books started to go down in circulation, not just because of competition from television and other things, or a loss of popularity for the medium, and also not just because of the cheating and the thievery. The whole story of distribution is probably another video, but also because you couldn't find the damn things. They weren't being put out as much where they could be seen and purchased. So anyway, DC and Marvel hatched a plan to raise the cover price from 15 cents up to 25 cents, make up for that to the buyer by giving them a larger package. In DC's case, they filled it out with reprints. But the theory was that this would help comic books retain their rack space a little bit. And there's a fantastic book called Comic Book Implosion. It was put out last year by Tomorrow's Publications, and it's all interviews from the time throughout the 70s, and there are a couple of quotes in there about how hard Marvel and DC were trying and how desperate they were. You hear about the imminent collapse of the comic book industry today. Well, it was the same in the late 60s, early 70s. People were convinced that comic books weren't going to last much longer. Maybe another year or two and the whole thing was going to implode in on itself. I've seen interviews with Paul Levitz, who at that time was a a young editorial assistant. And he said he first took the job at DC Comics just until something better came along, and he was just hopeful hopeful that the job would last until he found that thing, that the industry would survive that long, however long it took. As it turned out, it survived quite well for many decades, and he ended up retiring from DC as its publisher. So anyway, Marvel and DC agreed to go up to the 25-cent price point, again, to try and retain some of that rack space by giving the retailer a little bit more. Same profit margin probably, but a little bit more for the same rack space. But the very next month, Marvel came back down to 20 cents, the regular size package at 20 cents. DC tried to stick it out at the higher price point for almost a year before finally rolling back to the regular size at 20 cents itself. So why is this important? Why is this kind of a seminal moment in comic book history? Well, because it was at this point that Marvel finally overtook DC Comics in sales. Because a lot of people assume that, well, Marvel was very popular during the 60s. They actually call it the Marvel Age of comics. Surely Marvel was outselling DC then. No, actually they weren't. And part of the reason for that was, earlier in this video I spoke about the twofer titles, Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, Strange Tales. And the reason those were two heroes in one book is because Marvel could not publish more books. And this is probably worthy of its own video as well. But long about, I don't know what it was, 58 or so, Marvel publisher Martin Goodman, one of his employees, and I forget who, I've seen the name, but I can't remember it at the moment, talked him into folding his own distribution company, Atlas. You've heard 1950s era Marvel referred to as Atlas because of the Atlas globe on the cover. Well, that's because Atlas was actually the name of the distributor that Martin Goodman owned. And so Goodman took that advice, he folded the distribution company, and he outsourced distribution to American News Company. Now, why he would do this, I really can't tell you. I have no idea. It was a dumbass thing to do. Because American News Company at that point was under investigation for racketeering. I've mentioned that, distribution was pretty much a mob-run enterprise. And so they were under federal investigation for unfair trade practices. And I can only assume that in their desperation, they must have offered Goodman some really favorable terms in order for him to throw in with them. Or maybe it's just because, American News was so big, Goodman just could not conceive of the possibility that whatever trouble it was in with the feds, it might actually end up going out of business. Because, hey, you can't break up Ma Bell. You can't do that. So, anyway, well, they did it. And so American News Company ended up folding, going out of business, and Goodman stuck. He's got no distributor. It's going to take him too long to kind of ramp back up his own distribution company, which, he has completely, he's suitcased. And so he ends up going hat in hand to Independent News. Independent News was the distributor owned by Harry Donenfeld, who is the publisher of DC Comics. So, in his own interest, Donenfeld said, well, okay, and rather it was Donenfeld or the brains behind the operation, Jack Liebowitz. One of them said to Goodman, yeah, we'll distribute your books, but we're going to limit you to just 8 titles per month. So that's why when the Marvel Age of Comics started to take off, Stan Lee never published more than those 8 books, ended up putting 2 heroes each in his anthology titles because he could not publish more books. He had to double up. It was the best he could do. Well, that ended up changing towards the end of the 60s. DC ended up bought out by the Kinney National Corporation and then folded into Time Warner, at which point Independent News ended up just kind of going away as it the buzzword is created synergies, which basically means eliminating redundancies, which means that Warner had its own distribution arm, and so that took over the comic book distribution. Independent News went away, and eventually, because of that, comic book distribution went all to shit. At the same time, Marvel was bought out by some chemical company, and then became part of the Candace Corporation, which was publisher, I think, of the Saturday Evening Post, and it had its own distribution arm. So when DC got bought out by Kinney, that's when the boot got lifted a little bit, because they probably figured out, we don't have to hold this other company down, because we're making money on the distribution end, and so let them publish more titles. We'll just make more money. We don't have to hold them down to save our own sales. It was kind of probably a little bit of a short-sighted goal by people who didn't really understand the industry very well. And so, again, DC let up off of Marvel's neck a little bit, and that's when the titles broke out. Tales of Suspense became Captain America and Iron Man. Tales to Astonish became the Hulk and Submariner. And so again, we get to this point whereby now Marvel is part of the Candace Corporation. It's being distributed by them. They've got their own. Each company has its own distribution again. And they agreed to this sort of, I'm not going to call it price fixing, but they agreed we're all going to go up to 25 cents, and we'll make a larger package for that to make up for the dying difference for the buyer. But it'll give the retailer a little more money, and they'll keep the books on the stands. But Marvel reneged, went back to 20 cents the very next month. And that, boys and girls, that is when Marvel finally came out on top over DC Comics in the distribution wars, and has never looked back since. Marvel has outsold, except for, a few spurts here and there, such as the launch of the New 52 at DC back in 2011. Marvel has held on to its sales lead over DC Comics ever since this point right here, where it rolled back the price after 1 month. Caught DC with its pants down. DC tried its best to soldier on, but just didn't help. The kids really wanted the 20-cent books more than the 25-cent books, because again, the 25-cent books were just filling out with reprints, and at least at DC anyway. And the kids were like, well, I can get 4 books for $1, or I can get 5 books for $1. What am I going to do? All right, so that was a long story. So for those of you who are still watching, there's issue 146. There's another 146, and here is the last of this box. So 147, 147, 148, 149, some more Batroc, 150, 151. Still doesn't have any wings. 152. Still don't think he's flying. He's leaping anyway. 154. 155. No, 156. What is 156? Does this collection just not have 156, or is 156 a special issue that would have been sent to CGC? I can't remember off the top of my head, so you'll have to let me know. 159, 160. 61, 62. And again, I don't really have a lot to, these are nice white pages. These are some good books. Love the costume. I kind of wish that was the Captain Marvel costume. I'd love to see the look on Brie Larson's face when they said, "Hey, Brie, this is what you're wearing in Captain Marvel 2." 165, 166. Now he's flying. So I got to look it up. I got to figure out where's the first issue where the Falcon actually starts flying. 168, 169, and the last issue in this box, 170. And I think it's not much after this that I first started reading comics. This is probably 75, 76. This is actually 1974. But they were 25 cents when I started buying them, and I think it was in the 170s. I think my first issue might have been 179, maybe. And probably that's why that's probably why they're not in the box. It probably goes to 25 cents. Well, it wouldn't be, maybe just after this, not long after this anyway. I bet you the 25 centers, Sean sorted those out to be sold in multi-book lots rather than as singles. So anyway, that was fun. At least it was if you like Captain America. Or like listening to me ramble about nothing. Anyway, that's the video, boys and girls. So hey, until the next video, as Mordrew always says, goodbye, good luck, and please be good to each other.